Morning world, and welcome to Friday 30th of September. So all of you farm fans, you won't be staying very long because there is, at the moment, right now, not much going to happen on the farm today. Today is all catching up with tree work. I have got 19 jobs to look at. I'm not going to get around them all today because they're all over the place, but we are going to Nails of a Stride first. Yeah, if you want to come with me, come along for the ride. We're looking at trees today. Okay, so tree work. Although most of what I share with you is the farm stuff, my main source of income, as in what pays the mortgage, what pays the bills, what pays the wages, is our tree company. And my responsibility as far as the tree company is concerned is number one, keeping my guys safe. That's the first priority. Secondly, is to keep my customers happy. And it's not actually that difficult. Most folks are more than happy to take advice as far as their trees are concerned, because to be honest, most people really don't know that much about trees. It's just a big green thing sticking out of the ground, which quite often is a nuisance to them. To me, it's something completely different. To me, a tree is an essential and would be a much missed element of our life, of our countryside, of landscape, of everything. So I decided years and years ago that I wanted to make trees a career choice for me, mainly because I couldn't go farming. And it wasn't because I didn't want to go farming, I couldn't. All the farms in the family were owned by family who were actively farming it themselves, and there wasn't enough work to share it with me. And to be honest, I don't think my grandfather and uncle really had the time to be bothered with a young, keen person with new ideas and probably wanted to spend their money. So, which I kind of understand, because I'm now that older person who doesn't want the younger generation spending me money. What goes round comes round. So the farm is my first love, what I love doing, but the tree company is what pays the bills. So I have to do this. I say I had to. I could employ somebody else to do this, but the problem is with that is for 34 years I've been the face of the company, and our existing regular customers know me, trust me, and they call me because it's me. I know that if I employed somebody else to do my job, I would lose, or potentially lose, some of my customers. Not only that, it gets me away from the farm. You know, all you folks that do nothing but farm, it's great, but you know what? Farming is a lonely old job sometimes. You can spend hours, if not days, by yourself, talking to nobody, seeing nobody, and all you're doing is going up and down in a field. And the reward for it, the reward for doing that, don't care how big your farm is, can be less than satisfying, because farming relies on outside forces that determine how much you're going to earn from your farm. The one thing with the tree company, I'm in control of that. I determine how much I earn from a job by how I cost it and how I work out how we're going to do it. So yeah, I know a lot of you call me part-time farmer, and I don't mind that, because at the end of the day this little part-time farmer is doing an awful lot better than a lot of the full-time big farmers. Yeah, I'll leave it there. I think years ago when I chose to do arboricultural as a as a career has paid. Well, it has. If I hadn't done that, we would never have bought the golf course. We couldn't have afforded to buy the farm off my dad. We couldn't have afforded to build the house, because a 28-acre farm, which is what it was when I bought it, would never ever, unless you housed the whole lot and put it into intensive pigs or poultry, it would never ever have earned me a living. So anyway, that's aside. So a little bit of brief history of me. I started the tree company in 1989, and it was literally by accident, more or less. My mother-in-law, Audrey, who lives with us now, it wasn't long after I started seeing her daughter Julie that she said, "Oh, do you know anybody who could take the top out of my conifer trees?" And I said, "Yeah, I could do that. No problem. I'll do that for you." And that's literally the first job I did, pretty much. So I went up to my mother-in-law's with a borrowed chainsaw, because the only saw my father had was a Stihl 08S. In fact, I've still got that saw. Way too heavy to be climbing up, but nowhere near like a good idea. So I borrowed, I think it was a McCulloch chainsaw. I had no vehicles, no kits, no nothing really. It was one of those things where you expect the kind of service I could offer her was the kind of service that you might get from somebody who comes tapping on the door asking if they could do your trees for you because they're dangerous. Yeah, that's how I started. It was like by accident. Anyway, I took the top out of my mother-in-law's conifer trees. It was 4 or 5 big leyland in the corner. I took about 15 feet out of them. I had to use father's little 454 International and the rear discharge muck spreader, because we didn't have a trailer in good enough nick to take it all away. Now, bearing in mind this is in the posh part of town, you know, my mother-in-law had little old tractor, an old rear discharge muck spreader, which wasn't that clean, and some bloke in the back garden with no PPE and no training whatsoever up a tree with a chainsaw. That's how it started, by accident. So, oh, how did it go on? Well, I'll tell you how it went on. My mother-in-law's neighbours saw me doing the job, and they said, "Oh, you couldn't do ours, could you?" Yeah, I could do it next week. Bearing in mind, what was I doing? I was full-time working for a tarmac company. We were laying tarmac. In fact, I was a skid steer driver. It's where I learnt to drive a skid steer. So I said, yeah, I can probably come up next weekend and do it for you. And that is literally how we started. I would be working all week on the tarmac gang, and then weekends, word of mouth got out that I would do bits and bobs, and I'd do it for a bit of cash in hand, stuff like that at the time. And I started getting busy, and all of a sudden I was working 7 days a week, which was okay, because the tarmac company paid quite good money, and I was earning at least as much again on the weekends. So anyway, I left the tarmac company and went to work for a garden machinery company, we'll put it that way, doing garden machinery, which included selling chainsaws and also some tree surgery kit. And I got to know a few tree surgeons, and the one fella, Mike Clough, who, a little bit of history there, Mike Clough's father, and I can't remember his Christian name, was the surgeon at Franche Hospital who repaired my left leg when I broke my leg in a motorcycle accident. So we had a little bit. So anyway, I got very friendly with Mike Clough, and he took me under his wing for a while, and I learnt quite a lot from him. And basically I left my day job and went into full-time doing tree work. And that was where I had a lot of flyers printed, I got all my insurances sorted out, I started training properly, so I've gone off and doing my proper training. This is about a year after I started in bits and bobs, and it developed on from there. It was literally just, I kind of fell into the career. So, got myself qualified, did all my ground tickets, did all my aerial tickets, did all my rescue stuff, did all my first aid stuff, basically did everything I had to do to call myself qualified. which at the time was only 4 tests. 4 tests. I can't remember the name of them all now, but it was NPTC, so National Proficiency Test Council tests. 4 of them to take, and passed them all, no problem. Strangely enough, the guy who taught me, Tim Bendel, is also the guy who's going to be training my guys next month. They're off to do their training course. There's next month or a month after, might be November actually. So they're going to go off and do their climbing courses, and it's the same guy training them. So hi Tim. Anyway, I got myself all qualified. My grandmother lived in a council house in Dursley, and in her back garden was a big old mulberry tree. And mulberries, I mean, I didn't know at the time, but one of the strategies of the mulberry tree is actually to basically fall apart. Mulberry tree will split down the middle or lose a branch, fall on the floor. Wherever it hits the floor, it will happily relayer itself and take root, grow another mulberry tree from the branch. Anyway, her mulberry tree, which was probably getting on for 30 inches diameter, quite a large one, was splitting. So I rang Stroud District Council and spoke to their estates people, and I said, my name's Ian Pullin, I'm a qualified tree surgeon. I'd just like to let you know that my grandmother's mulberry tree in the back garden is forming a split, and in my opinion will become unsafe, and she's a little old lady. And I think it was George that I spoke to in the office, and George said, well, that's very kind of you, Mr. Pulley. He said, would you like to give us a quote to do whatever you think wants doing? And I said, oh, okay. I mean, this is 30 years ago, mate. You wouldn't get away with it now. I said, okay, no, I can do that. And I quoted him at a ridiculously cheap price. I mean, I think it was 40 something quid to do a crown reduction on this tree. It took me all day to take this tree down, or reduce the tree, take all the weight out of it, put a brace in there and remove all the waste. 40 something quid. Sent the bill in and they paid it. And 23 years later, I was still working for them. That was just one of those things, the luck of the draw. They basically called me back and said, we've been out and inspected the work you did and we're really impressed. Would you like some more? And I said, bring it on. And that's how we started working for Stroud District Council literally 30 years ago. We got to know a lot of the council officers really well. A lot of them I still speak to today. And it was just one of those things where we'd always be there. If they had a problem, we would always be there. We'd always be uber reliable to get stuff done. Eventually, council work had to go out to tender. And I was finding myself every 3 or 5 years tendering for a council contract, and we won it. We just continued to win it. Sometimes we won it by a little bit too big a margin, and sometimes we won it by a squeaky margin. The squeaky one is better. The only reason we finally lost our contract with Stroud District Council, which is still a little bit of still sticks in my claw a little bit, was they transferred the tendering for council work from a paper tender. So basically they send you all the forms and you fill them all out and you put all your other bits of forms inside and you attach it all in a big bundle and you send it back. They changed it from that to an online portal tendering system, which was okay. We could do it. Apart from one problem is you have to attach stuff to this application, and for some reason, which I will never know, our accounts, even though we've been working for them for 23 years, our accounts package, which proves that we're a liquid and viable business, it didn't attach to our bid. And because our accounts package is just one set of forms, didn't attach to our application, we lost it. We lost the contract. It was annoying for me because I learned afterwards that even though it was spotted that it wasn't attached, and the council officers had picked up on it, they were not allowed to tell me. Apparently it was unfair and against the rules for them to tell me that, did you know that you haven't attached your accounts package to your bid? Were not allowed to tell me. And we were also told afterwards that apparently the accounts had decided, I think it was the accounts department or a department had decided that we, as in the company Tree Management, had been working for the council for too long. It was all too friendly and too pally and a bit too, you know, and all they're worried about is corruption. You know, was there little brown envelopes involved? Was it you know, jobs for the boys and mates and all that sort of stuff, which of course it wasn't. So again, that's the other reason they were not allowed to tell us. Still sticks, because we were always as white as snow. Honestly, it's in 23 years we never had one go back and do it again, ever. So if you work for the council and a job isn't up to scratch, they can serve you with a notice saying, this job's not up to scratch, we're not paying you until you go back and put it right. Never had one, ever. So yeah, so it sticks in my claw that after all those years of really making the effort to do it right, certain powers that be said, nah, he's been here too long, it's time to go. So we were gone. Unfortunately, all the culture in the Ebley Mill and the council afterwards changed. So one or two of the officers that I worked with then are still there, and I still talk to them, still get on fine with them. But a couple of them that were there who are no longer there have said, you don't want to go back anyway, Ian. It's completely changed. There is nothing cooperative or friendly about it now. It is all just business, which to a degree, I suppose that's fair enough, because it is business. But why can't you do business with, you know, an element of friendship and cooperation and mutual appreciation and respect and all that sort of stuff? Well, what's wrong with that? I don't know. I think half the world's run by accountants, and I know a few accountants, and although some of them have got a sense of humour, it's not like mine. So, anyway, that's the story of kind of how I started off with the council work. We lost the Stradale District Council work. It didn't really matter because we were working for the county highways. So, and that was night times and, you know, early morning starts and sometimes quite exciting stuff. You know, we get involved with clearing up after road traffic accidents and stuff like that. Not always fantastic. Obviously, occasionally we come across stuff that wasn't brilliant. You know, if someone's impaled by a tree, that's not really much fun, but it was interesting. So, and we worked for 10 years for the highways, for different departments, until Amy took it on. So Amy took on the contract from the county, and they were such a shower because they didn't pay their bills. And I mean, they didn't pay their bills. You'd have to wait 3-4 months to get a bill paid. So they'd ring me up at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, right, we need you in Cheltenham now with a team. There's a tree down. You got to go and clear it up. You know, you have to be there on 2 hour notice. Quite often we had the job done within 2 hours, I will add. But then they'll go, yeah, but we're not paying you for 120 days. I got fed up with that. So now, we still work for our local parish and town councils, we still work for them, and we still work for the county council, but not any of their subsidiaries. We work directly for the county council now, and we have a very good relationship with them, and I do talk to them, and we do enjoy a conversation, and they pay me within 2 weeks. That's what I want, because it means I can pay my blokes. So, and I got a funny feeling I turned the wrong way. So I thought the road I was going to was down here. In fact, I still think it's down here. But the sat-nav's saying, oh, it's over there. Right, I'm going to have an argument with my sat-nav, and then when we get to where we're going, maybe I'll bring you with me and tell you how I work out how I'm going to do a quote. I know some of you will be interested in that, just a few. Okay, so we are looking at that fella there. Not that one there, sycamore, the ash. So apparently there are some very early signs of dieback. Well, they are, but they're really minor. But the instruction is to take it down. But I don't think we have a lot of space. Right, can't get out through there because that's locked, so I'll have to walk round. Okay. So, large, awkward, confined space, public right of way, overhanging another private garden. So all the things that add up to making a job less than simple. Right. I need to get out on that path and look from that side. So these fellas need lifting up a bit as well. That's the easy bit. That one there, I'd say half of that is overhanging a private garden behind. I might even have to go and knock on their door just to see what's underneath, because I can't see over the fence. Bound to be a greenhouse or something, or a fish pond. Okay, so 2 main stems splitting into 4, 5. It won't be easy. So we'll have to close the footpath. So I'll have to go down there and find out where this footpath comes out to. Obviously on the road because I can hear it. But where? And is there an alternative route to send pedestrians? Because that's not going to be a day. Okay, right. I know where that is. Looks pretty well trodden, this path, doesn't it? Right. Okay, so how am I going to work this out? Well, I'm going to have a look from the other side, see if I can get into the neighbour's garden and have a look from over there. And then we've got to work out how many hours it's going to take us to get that down and away. How many trips, as in the volume of waste to get rid of. So how many miles. So yeah, all the things that we calculated is how many people. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blokes I reckon for this, minimum. And probably day and a half. Maybe 6 blokes, we'll have a spare driver. Yeah. We'll see how much, because I obviously burn firewood. They might want to keep some of this for logs. That'll save us a trip. Okay. So something else to take into consideration up here. Big cavity up there. And that looks pretty shiny around there. I'd be less than surprised if I found something living in there. So we might have to do a little bit of research on that first. That might be a problem. Okay, so this is the private garden behind, And underneath, I'm not showing you the house, just so we've got no greenhouses, no fish ponds, but plenty of stuff that could get damaged. So everything's going to have to be rigged back that way. Thank you very much. Nice chap has bought me out a bag so I can help myself to a few apples. So, Anyway, just asked, we can probably lower some bits down into the garden here gently and take them out this way if we have to. It's just another string to the bow, knowing what we can and can't get away with. Right. Okay. That will be a bit exciting. Okay. That's looking at it from the inside again. Yeah, 1.5 days. Might be a bit shy, I reckon. 2. Just to be on the safe side. So that's off, that's off. Okay, so the notes I've got to make now are going to be basically the height of the tree. So they've had a tree report done on this, and the report said the tree was between 15 and 20 metres. It's definitely 20 metres plus. So it was bigger than anticipated. So I need to contact the customer and find out if they want to keep the firewood. I'm kind of hoping that they do, although we like taking firewood home because we convert it and sell it on again. It's all uphill, and I've got a choice of either up a fairly steep footpath with it or up a dozen very short steps, and carrying any weight up and down little tiny steps, and they're too steep for any machinery or anything like that. This is all going to be actually handballed out. So the easiest way for us is to lower everything into the footpath and go that way. But even then, because the footpath is not very wide, there's not really enough room for 2 people. If someone's dragging a load of stuff out, there's not enough room for someone to walk back down. So we might have to do a circular, because there's a fence, a gate onto the footpath. We might have to go as the footpath is out and through the garden is in. So it's like a one-way system. Yeah, so I'm reckoning on about 16 cubic meters of wood chip, and probably, depending on what they keep, 4 truckloads of timber. So that is 5 loads of waste to come away. Yeah, I'm going to go home and work that out at my desk quietly. So 6 blokes, 2 days, 5 loads of waste, plus that. Right, so next job, we're going over to Dursley. This is to look at a large holly and a silver birch tree. Both trees want reducing. It's getting late in the year for birch. There are certain times of year for certain jobs, like conifer hedge trimming. For us, that's more or less coming to an end now. We try and have all our conifer trees done by the end of September, and that's to avoid any new growth that comes on after September, if there is any, being very tender, getting nipped by frost. Conifers don't really like having their jumpers taken off when it's about to get cold. So, and it's the same as even taking the tops out. You can, but if you take the top off of your conifer tree hedge this time of year, if you liken it to going outside with no clothes on in the frost, it's cold. So it is literally taking the jumper off of the tree. They don't like it. So there are times of year when it's advisable to do stuff, and there are times of year when it's advisable not. Pretty much, if you work on a rule of thumb, that the best time to prune most trees is in the summer, when they're in full leaf and they're most active and all the defensive systems are awake. That is kind of the best time to do most trees. I won't say every single one, but well into the 90% summertime. So birch trees, again, we will avoid pruning much beyond, well, we will go up until Christmas if we have to, but you certainly don't be pruning them in the spring months because they'll bleed. And what they're bleeding out is all the energy that they stored up last year. So if I have a choice, we would stop pruning birch trees by the end of October. So I don't like pruning them beyond there, and we would advise customers to wait until the next year before they prune anything with what we call a diffuse porous growth system. So I won't get into trying to teach you how to suck eggs, but if you imagine a tree stem full of straws and tubes, so all the tubes going up are in the sapwood, this year's and last year's, and sometimes a couple of other years before wood. There's like a little straws that transpirational pull and tropisms and all that sort of stuff pull water up. That is transferred, because it carries dissolved nutrients, that is transferred into energy. Some of it is distributed into the tree, and a lot of it goes back down through the bark to the roots. So the bark of the tree feeds the roots, which is why if you ring bark a tree, it will eventually die. You're not killing the top part of the tree, that bit stays alive. You're killing the roots. Don't ring bark trees. Well, unless you're harvesting firewood in a couple of years and you do it deliberately for a harvest, a good reason, but don't ring bark trees. Anyway, so some trees have narrow straws and some trees have wide straws. And not only that, is some trees straws are wide in the summer, which then narrow in the winter months, which is how you see the rings. The rings in the tree, when you look at a stump, is actually the end view of all the pores that are going up. I'm calling it pores because it's the easiest way of explaining it. So the darker rings, or the rings you're counting, is actually the winter rings. They're just smaller, very, very small, minuscule amount of growth, anything going on, and everything basically shutting down for that period. And then the wider, whiter stripe is the summer growth, when the tree is actually putting on a bit of girth. Anyway, not all trees work that way. That's ring porous. So, but diffuse porous, which is like your birch trees and your maple trees, the pore size tends to stay the same all year round, winter and summer. And the problem with that is if you prune a tree in the spring or even in late winter, and you cut those pores, although it may not bleed straight away if you do it this time of year, those pores are big enough that when the tree starts to push sap in the spring, it will bleed. Okay, you've all heard of maple syrup, stuff like that, and maybe even birch wine. Well, there's a time to tap your trees, and that's when the sap's rising. Well, if you make a big wound, the sap will rise and literally just pour out all over the floor, and that is wasted energy. So yeah, if you've got a birch tree, walnut tree, maple trees, anything that's diffuse porous, do not prune it until it is in full leaf and has been for, let's say, a month. Once it's been in full leaf for a month, then you can prune it. All right, unless of course you're pruning it off at ground level, then it doesn't matter. You do that whenever. Just, yeah, fed it. So you learned something today, okay? Walnuts, birches, maples are the three most common ones. There are others, but never prune in the late winter or early spring. Okay, so it's late spring, very late spring, summer, early autumn. That's when you prune them. Okay, right. Okay, so yes, holly and birch next. It's likely that with the workload we've got on right now, the birch, I'll look at it and I'll quote for to do the work she wants to do, but I will probably, unless it's a smallish one, I don't know the tree, unless we can fit it in as a fit-in, probably she'll be advised not to do it until April next year. That will be the advice. The nice man in the house behind the ash tree offered me some apples. So they're really small. Oh, they're delicious. I already picked up half a dozen. I wish I put up a dozen now. Oh, that's lovely. Crisp and sweet. You want it, don't you? You can't have it. Okay, that's my third and last visit in Dursley done. So, fairly large wild cherry tree that resided in an extremely small garden. I mean, really small. We've reduced it a couple of times in the past. So this would be third or fourth visit here. So the tree is very stressed. It's got a decay issue in the base. There are 4 smallish Ganoderma brackets sticking out the bottom, so fairly fresh ones, quite active. But the base of the tree has visibly swelled into what we call bottle butt, which is an indication of internal decay. So initially the client wanted us to basically just reduce it again. The problem with that is because the tree is stressed and the crown is quite thin, it doesn't seem to have ever really recovered properly from the last time we pruned it, which was about 3 years ago. And I basically said, you know what, I think you're probably wasting your money pruning it. The leaf cover is not good. The health of the tree is visibly poor. If we reduce the leaf area any smaller, that could be enough just to kill the tree, because the tree can't produce enough energy to defend itself against decay and invading insects and stuff like that, because once you get decay, then you get insects as well attack. I said it's probably going to kill the tree. So the decision was made. Basically, they said to me, what would you do? And I said, well, if it was my tree, to be honest, with all the issues and problems it's got, you've got a nice new pear tree planted 6 foot away from it. The pear tree's starting to push away for light. I said, why don't we take the cherry tree down and give the pear tree some space? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take it down. So in one way, it's sad to remove a tree that's been there for many, many years, but in another way, it's obviously got issues. Without getting right into the nitty-gritty of what's gone on, I can't tell you why, but there's lots of small dead branches, very thin crown, very low vigor, obvious decay in the stem. We won't know the extent of that until we actually take the tree down and see what the extent of the decay is. We know it's significant, but yeah, I think it was just easier with a garden that you're looking at sort of 15, 16 feet by 15, 16 feet with a big wild cherry in the middle of it. The tree was just too big for the space and where it was and everything else. Take it down. So the customer does a bit of wood turning, so I've offered to leave him, because he wanted everything taken away, I've offered to leave him a couple of pieces that we think will be quite nice for him to put on the lathe once he's dried it out. So I pointed them out to him and he's agreed. So we're going to, this provided we get the job, we will cut a few pieces out from suitable positions on the tree that will give him something interesting to make when we're looking at grains and patterns. It's basically where branches meet, branch unions, branch stem unions. You can quite often get some very nice patterns and colours in there. So we'll cut him some blanks, because that's the kind of guys we are. Well, it's better than turn it into firewood, isn't it? Make something pretty out of it. Lasts 100 years. Log lasts hour. No brainer. So I have got one more job to look at in Dursley, but that is for a client who it's not their house they live in. They own the house, but they have tenants in it. So I have to work around when the tenants are home for us to gain access into the garden to go and look at this tree for the landlord. So that'll be at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So I've only got, well, hour and 3/4 I've got to go back. But I've also got a couple of bags of logs to deliver just down the road from where I'm looking at that. So I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So this afternoon's job is going to be, looking at more trees. The one I'm looking at this afternoon has got a TPO on it, tree preservation order on it. I think it's a big yew tree from what I understand. Again, that's going to be, I think it's a small garden with a big tree, but the big tree's got protection. So it's a case of what they want to do, what I think we can get away with, as in what I think the council will approve, because to do that we have to put in a full application on planning, and they will want whys and wherefores and reasons and methods and loads of information on TPO, on why we're going to do it, how we're going to maintain it. Paperwork. TPO applications are no fun. I don't enjoy them, but someone has to do it. If I'm lucky, the client does it. If I'm unlucky, muggins. What? You're looking at me in that I want a biscuit fashion. What? This is like speaking with no words. What? What do you want? Why do you have to tell me what you want? What do you want? Hey? What is it you require? Talk to me. I already know what she wants, but she's going to have to tell me. What do you want? Does Biscuit want a biscuit? Is that what it is? Is it one of them you want? Not one of them. Oh, I know. No, you can't. She wants to sit on my lap. Not when we're driving. You know the rules. Not when I'm driving. We'll wait till we get home. It's usually food. Usually.